Sup. Welcome to week number 8. This week, we're going to be talking about my current thoughts on Studio Madhouse and what they're doing lately, I suppose, is probably a good starting point. Studio Madhouse is one of the few studios out there who, especially pre 2011, produced some of the best works I had ever even had the pleasure of seeing in the industry. But past 2011, uh, or post 2011, I should say, Masao Maruyama left, and the studio never really was the same since then. It really is a shame that it's currently at the state that it is, where it's producing subpar shows mostly and not really ambitious in nature as it used to be. Some of their other works, like Chihaya Furu, are kind of directly in opposition to the initial thing that Maruyama set out to do in the first place, which is not do any sequels and stuff like that. They don't really do that, or didn't used to do that, I should say, pre 2011. But now it seems that it's just not in the cards to care about that type of stuff anymore. Now that he's gone, and there's really no point in not listening to him, because he's at Mappa or whatever the other studio he formed. But let's talk about their evolution from, I guess, should say, top of the pack to mediocre or adequate nowadays, um, and what pretty much happened, I should say. This is not a comprehensive analysis whatsoever. It's a more of a basic idea that, from my memory, is going to be probably correct. If I make any mistakes, that's on me. Anyhow, back in the day, Studio Madhouse seemed to be a starter for a studio. Their first show was called Ace Wo Nere, or Narai, I should say. Um, it was a tennis show. I watched the first episode and I couldn't watch any more because it's made in like the 70s. And if you've ever tried to watch a show back then, you would be pleasantly surprised to know that it's unbearable to watch. Those shows are just unbearable to watch, and I would not recommend watching any of them unless it's like a classic film, right? Anyhow, back when they were starting up, I think that it's not really that important to, calculate their track record and their like most important works back then, because most of their important works happened, uh, you know, in the two, 2000s essentially. A lot of their works like Death Note, Satoshi Kon's films, Red Line, Summer Wars, all those films and shows that they produced, like Tatami Galaxy, it's where a bunch of creators got their start. Masaki Yuasa making Tatami Galaxy with them is a crowning achievement on his end. Satoshi Kon, one of the greatest directors of our time in anime, unfortunately died at a very young age before his career could take off, or it did take off, but before his career could like reach a absolute peak. And his last movie will probably never be uh, shown to the public. But aside from that, it's where a lot of people got their start, and it's where a lot of creators we know today really bred themselves as ambitious people. And Madhouse was known for this. They were known for being ambitious. They're known for taking risks, even though it completely drained their pockets. But Masao Maruyama, the producer, main producer of Madhouse, he made sure that there were risks being taken, and that's why they're such a well-respected studio now, or now, because they've pretty much done their fill. You can pretty much take it however you want now. They're pretty much doing sequels of their older IPs sometimes because they just can't seem to break buck. But you know, they spent a lot of money trying to make ambitious works worth it, and leaving their mark on the industry, which is more than enough, I should probably say. More than enough. Anyhow, uh, these directors, these art directors, creating shows like Nana and stuff like that. It's all in the books for Madhouse now. Uh, but present day Madhouse is pretty much a shell of its former self in the sense that they don't really they try to play it safe too much, right? And people can argue, oh, what about One Punch Man in 2015? Well, that was a project that took a long time, and that will probably the amount of people that had to come together to make One Punch Man and create that type of show will never be seen again, for One Punch Man at least. It is pretty much the last uh, significant production from Studio Madhouse back when they actually cared about making like actual stuff. Um, but if you know any good shows in your catalog, you probably have one or two of their shows in your top 20 at least. I fail to see why you wouldn't. Um, and even before, like late 2000s, in the early 2000s, they were making shows like Monster or Black Lagoon or Helsing. You got a lot of amazing shows on that catalog and a lot of history behind a lot of their directors, especially. I know what is it, Monsters director. His name is Masayuki Kojima, right? He was on the Keaton films or the Keaton show and the Keaton OVA. Directed Monster. He did this one movie with Madhouse called The Tibetan Dog. Uh, he got his start with Madhouse too, and it all kind of culminates in all their a lot of these directors' careers really culminate in being a part of Madhouse, being a part of what it meant to be a part of Madhouse back then, and being a part of Madhouse now just doesn't mean the same thing as what it meant back then. You could be a part of Madhouse today, and none of the credit really. You have the name of the studio, of course, behind your back, but none of the respect really lies in the name anymore. More so relies on the content they produced back then, not now. So let's just talk about why I have such a disdain for Madhouse at its current state. Obviously, you know that I have already gone over this, but they make a lot of sequels now, which is directly against their policy before of not making any sequels or any follow-ups except for I think it was the one boxing show, Hajime no Ippo. It was either Hajime no Ippo or Ashita no Joe, but I think that was TMS. So I'm pretty sure it's Hajime no Ippo, the boxing show. Anyhow, that was their policy. They don't do anything sequel. They don't do that stuff, which is why people who begged Madhouse back then to make sequels to really popular stuff, that's not gonna happen. They're doing it one time and one time only, usually. That's their grain. That's their motto, I should say. Anyhow, nowadays they have no problem doing anything they want. They just make as many sequels as they want because they're probably pressed for money from all the amount of rapid spending Masaru Maruyama made them do back in the day. Because those productions aren't cheap. Redline, if you watch that film and you thought it was cheap, I just have no words. Anyhow, you can see distinctly in the quality of their work, the time it takes to make a piece like a Redline or One Punch Man. You can clearly see that uh, their quality of work takes time and effort and production values. It can't just be repetitive or done over and over again, which is hence why sequels weren't really a big part of their thing, and probably hence why One Punch Man season 2 never happened, because it's just too hard of a production to make again, and that's a fair statement. Uh, but nowadays, of course, you have that they make sequels, but it's not just that. The ambitiousness of their works have degraded over time because they don't have a drive to do it anymore. A lot of their staff when Masaru Maruyama left, he took them to Mappa. A lot of the staff, or talented staff, I should say, he took them over to Mappa. Some of them branched out, like Masaki Uasa. He went to Science Saru. I don't think he was exclusively for with Madhouse. I know Satoshi Kon worked with Madhouse because, Masaru Maruyama and Satoshi Kon were best buds, sorta. Anyhow, but I know some people like Masaki Uasa branched off, made their own stuff, made their own studio, right? And it's just split now. Every single talented creator that used to be together as a culminated figurehead in Madhouse is gone. I don't know the exact reason Masaru Maruyama left the company, other than he kind of bankrupted them, or not company, but production studio, right? It's pretty much that. He he's the sole reason why he got booted, because he tried to make too much good work. That's what my interpretation of it is, at least. You can make your own thing, but yeah, the board pretty much just uh, can't have that type of rapid spending of money over and over again to make ambitious works if it's not paying off. And you can see that in a lot of their older, or actually not older, but leading up to 2011, you can see the works getting a lot more intensive, a lot more budget heavy, and you can't really argue against that at all. You can't. But it's all kind of settling now. I'm not too disappointed. I think Madhouse is, or it used to be, my favorite studio until I watched a lot of their recent works. Right now, my priority is focusing on Kyoto Animation, or Studio Dean, and a lot of people disagree with me in Studio Dean, but I think they're doing a great job right now. So, yes, back to the main point. Madhouse isn't really ambitious anymore because they don't feel the need. And with that comes the reputation of Studio Madhouse. And what comes next for them, what I think at least. Madhouse has been in a rut recently with the, No Guns Life not really being that great. 6.93 last seen on Mal. Yeah, not too good. They did well with Chihaya Furu, 8.55, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, but those are sequels, right? You're reusing old IPs, and obviously the newer IPs like No Guns Life isn't being taken seriously because it doesn't have years of backing behind it. I think the first season of Chihaya Furu came out around like 2012 or something like that. So you're kind of competing with big guns here. Anyhow, right? Their newer works aren't as powerful as when they were back then, right? Originals are just not compelling to look at, and that's just fine. I think that we should all come to terms, especially myself, right? I'm the one making this video, of course. Come to terms with Madhouse not being a competent studio anymore. They're a competent studio, but they're just not the studio they once were, and we should stop trying to hope that they will somehow bounce back, because I don't think that's happening. I myself have realized after idolizing a lot of its creators and indulging myself in their works wholeheartedly. I even took the time to just divulge all of my efforts into watching Studio Madhouse for 1 month, one time, and it's just hard to let go of such a competent and well-respected studio, because they deserve more, I think, for going the extra mile to produce those types of works. That's what I think. They went the extra mile to really crack down on what makes shows and movies great in the medium of anime, and it's really disappointing to see that they struggle to make ends meet after all they've done. Yeah. I know this kind of is a short podcast this week, but I really don't have anything else to say. and I think I would be rambling if I went on any further. So, I think I'll just call it there and maybe do a different type of analysis next week to fill in the lost time, but yeah. See you next week.